This problem is asking us to deal with sequences, where on a chessboard, on the first square is 1 grain of rice, the second square is 2 grains of rice, the third square has 4 grains of rice, and so on. If we were to write out the terms of this sequence, it would look something like this. It would go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. We can see that the grains of rice is doubling each time. The first question asks us to find the number of grains of rice on the 8th square. So we can carry on writing out the terms of our sequence. 16 times 2 is 32, times 2 again is 64, and again to give 128. The second part of our question asks to find how many grains of rice on the 15th square, which using this method would take a considerable amount of time. We can see that the grains of rice is doubling with each square, like so. In effect, our first term, number of grains of rice 1, is being times by 2, times by 2, times by 2, which can be expressed as an indice. Two to the power, as we are doubling each time. However, we must be careful because our first term is not 2, it is 1. So for the second term, we times by 2 once. For the third term, we've times by 2 twice. For the fourth term, we've times by 2 once, twice, 3 times. Therefore, our expression for our formula can be 2 to the power of n, the terms, minus 1, because we start with 2. This makes solving the 15th term relatively easy. We can put in our 15 into our formula, 2 to the 15 minus 1, which equals 2 to the power of 14. And using our calculator, we get the answer 16384 grains of rice. The final part of our question asks us to estimate the number of grains of rice to fill the entire board. We can see that the board is 8 by 8 squares, to give us a total number of squares of 64. So the total grains of rice would look something like this using our formula from earlier. So our formula from earlier was 2n minus 1 to give the number of grains of rice on that particular square. So our equation for the total grains of rice on the board would look something like this. All the way to the final square, 2 to the power of 63. This would also take quite a considerable amount of time to calculate each of the individual sums. If we go back to our original sequence and work out the total number of grains of rice on the board, so 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 4 is 7, plus 8 is 15, 31, 63, and so on. We can see that there is a relationship between the total number of grains of rice on the board and the number of squares that we are looking at. And that is that our totals are in fact square numbers take away 1. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. So 2 to the power of 3 is 8. 2 to the power of 4 is 16. 2 to the power of 5 is 2 to the power of 6 is. From this that we can see that the total grains of rice on the board is 2 to the power of the nth term take away 1. 4 take away 3, 8 take away 1, 16 take away 1. So our formula is 2 to the power of n minus 1. Sorry, 2 to the power of n minus 1. Because we worked out there were 64 squares on the board, we can put this final square into our formula to give an estimate of the total number of grains of rice on the board, which should be 2 to the power of 64 minus 1, 64 squares. Our which our calculator gives us as a predictably high number. Amazing.